What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on nootropics and testosterone and performance enhancement using pretty much anything that we can get within reason or use to make us feel, perform, and function awesomely. Thanks for being with me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the bell to get notified of all the content that we are putting out. All right, so I'm going to dive into this Dave Asprey video. I think this is an important video to do because Asprey has been talking about nootropics since like 2012 or something, probably before that. In fact, he was one of the pioneering kind of grandfathers of the discussion of nootropics, along with Tim Ferriss, who you can see in the top right-hand corner in the suggested videos section of this video. And these guys are well versed in the usage of certain nootropics, but as I'll explain and we'll sort of get into, I think they sort of put out their information in a basic way, kind of dumbed down for a particular type of audience, and we'll talk about that. So let's just watch this video of Asprey talking about nootropics.
Since this is Big Think, let's talk about the things that help you think big. And you might think, oh great, this is going to be a Tony Robbins discussion. No, this is a discussion around nootropics, or what's known as smart drugs. I have been using smart drugs for more than 20 years, both the pharmaceutical side and the natural side, where we have lots of plant compounds.
All right, so let's just couch it there. Asprey, that's one thing that he definitely has on his side, okay? This guy has been discussing nootropics for as long as I can remember. And again, back in 2007, when I first got into nootropics, it was people like him and Tim Ferriss, and there was this other guy who wrote a book. I forget exactly what his name is, Stephen something. Fowkes, maybe? I think his name is Stephen Fowkes, who discussed nootropics. And yeah, I think Asprey had this video documentary on, I don't know, one of the major, press channels where they interviewed him taking modafinil, and they would get shots of him pre-modafinil, and he was sitting there being like, my brain's slow, I can't really function well. And then he would take modafinil, and I think it was like 17 minutes later or something, like the guy was working at light speed and functioning really awesomely. So Asprey definitely has been around for a considerable amount of time discussing nootropics. So in that regard, he's got a degree of authority. So let's listen to the rest of this.
I've even formulated some for my company where it puts together things. Oh, look, there's studies on rosemary. There's studies for this extract of seaweed. Good studies that show that these are increasing your ability to get things in and out of your memory or making your brain work better. And it turns out Mother Nature apparently wants us to be higher performance because she makes a couple really potent smart drugs, and you might even have used one or both of them.
Okay, so before we move on to what he's about to talk to next, which I imagine is either modafinil or aniracetam, it's all he really ever talks about. One of the things about Asprey is I think there are different types of experts as it relates to nootropics, and Asprey is a very, as I said, he sort of dumbs down what he's saying, and there is usually a degree of lack of nuance when it comes down to how he explains things. Like Asprey will say, oh, this will make your brain work better, or improve your ability to put things in and out of your working memory. And in some cases, he'll actually explain that function is memory I/O. But he'll really never kind of explain through which neurotransmitter system or receptor sites these things function. And that's one of the differences between Dave Asprey and like me, is I like to get very nuanced about how this is actually working, because there's a good degree of people who, like, if you're interested in nootropics, you actually want to understand that they're fussing with acetylcholine or modulating dopamine pathways or modulating glutamate or GABA pathways or sensitizing serotonin receptors. These are the kind of details that you do want to know, especially if you have an objective to realize using nootropics, and most people do. They've got some brain fog at some capacity, they have a memory or focus issue, or they have some dysfunction from a pharmaceutical drug that they may have took or are taking or took for a long time, and they kind of need to understand at a mechanisms level how to resolve the issue. So that's one of the big differences. You're not going to get nuanced information out of Asprey. You'll get some basic stuff. So let's continue.
The most commonly consumed cognitive enhancing substance on the planet is coffee. Now, bulletproof coffee, I probably had a bias for saying that, but no, seriously, 90% of people drink coffee, and caffeine is a very well-studied performance enhancer, at least over the short period. You can't drink coffee for 3 days straight and expect to perform well at the end. But could we go deeper than that? And by the way, coffee itself, at this point, I feel comfortable saying it's an anti-aging substance, given the preponderance of studies. All of the big four killers and things like that, they seem to get better. So you have a cognitive enhancer that looks like it's beneficial on many different aspects. I'm all in on that one. But what about nicotine? Well, is that a cognitive enhancer? It turns out that nicotine actually, since 1988, has been studied and shown to be an anti-Alzheimer's agent. What? I actually interviewed a guy, call him Dr. Nicotine. His name's Andrew Newhouse on Bulletproof Radio. And he's the guy who wrote the first paper in 1988 at Vanderbilt University and has been studying nicotine ever since. Smoking is bad for you. Chewing tobacco is bad for you. Vaping is bad for you. However, a little bit, we're talking microdosing of oral nicotine, is a potent cognitive enhancer.
Okay, so yes, again, I mean, this is Asprey speaking very basic about this, but nicotine is definitely a nootropic. I mean, you get yourself a nicotine patch. I mean, that's one of the best ways to deliver nicotine, and either have it be like a 14 milligram or 21 milligram patch of kind of slow release nicotine over the course of a 24-hour period or your waking period, and then you're definitely going to have better brain function, particularly working memory, general central processing, like the speed of processing your brain uses to process information to be better, faster. Your reference memory is typically better when you're taking nicotine. Generally, verbal fluency can be better for some people taking nicotine. And then energy, right? It just sort of puts you in an energized place cognitively. And one of the reasons, or the primary reason it's doing that, is it's binding to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. And those receptors control those types of brain function. So when you have a direct agonist like nicotine to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, it's almost like giving your brain more choline to bind to those receptors. In the case of racetams, they force choline to be released from certain regions of your brain, and then they bind to the choline receptors, the acetylcholine receptors, and then they provoke that brain function response. So nicotine acts in that same way. We're going to do a video about that coming soon, because I've been experimenting with nicotine patches. Large milligram nicotine patches left on for an 8 to 12 hour period. I've gotten some pretty interesting results, so look forward to that. Okay, so I think he talks about aniracetam and some other smart drugs here in a second. Now he's just promoting his stuff, which Asprey is definitely good at. Let's see. As far as the nicotine dosage, again, 2 milligrams is what I would suggest if you're somebody who's never smoked or never consumed nicotine, because it may be potently overstimulating. But if you vaped before, or you were a smoker at some point, or you are, then yeah, you're probably going to want to shoot for higher doses of it. Again, if you get a patch, 7 to 14 to 21 milligrams of a patch that's sustained and slow released over a long period of time, you are going to have some pretty impressive brain performance. So I think Asprey's talking about aniracetam here, so let's get to that.
One of my favorite drugs that I write about is called aniracetam, and it is a pharmaceutical substance. It's spelled A-N-I-R-A-C-E-T-A-M. It's been around for about 50 years, and it was pioneered in Russia. This is something that's neuroprotective, and it enhances the ability to get things in and out of your memory. They call it memory I/O. So when I'm sitting here talking, saying, what was the name of that study? How do you think I do that? Well, I did do the research, but I also used cognitive enhancers in order to make my brain work better.
Okay, so if you've watched any, this is what I mean by like dumbed down and very basic, and this isn't like being derogatory toward Asprey. I think he's just talking to a particular market or audience. That he said that same thing, aniracetam enhances memory I/O, pulling things in and out of your memory, smart drug, pharmaceutical from Russia, blah, 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 for the longest, right? One of the things he never really discusses is mechanisms of action, forcing choline release from the hippocampus, binding to glutamate subtype receptors. They're called AMPA receptors, fostering LTP. That's the chemical underpinning of what's really going on when aniracetam is in its effect duration window. And that's actually important to know. Like if you need extra memory formation or facilitation of memory formation via enhancing LTP, aniracetam would be a great compound to take. If for some reason you're taking an anticholinergic, many pharmaceutical drugs, for whatever reasons that they're targeting, like anxiety or depression as an example, they're anticholinergic, meaning they either block choline receptors or they fuss with the signaling of acetylcholine. Aniracetam is very useful in that context. So it's important to get a little more nuance with some of these discussions, and that's just one of the things that Dave Asprey kind of never does. So let's finish this off and see what else he has to say.
Because you know what? It feels really good to have a brain that works. especially as you age. And it's entirely possible to do this just from food, but there's another level that you get when your diet's dialed in, when your sleep is dialed in. It's okay to then add the plant-based, naturally occurring cognitive enhancers.
Okay, so that's pretty much it for this video. So, my end assessment, is Dave Asprey an expert on nootropics? No. If you define expert on nootropics as I do, as somebody who both uses nootropics, understands the mechanisms of action of nootropics, understands the applicability or what they are good for, and can also explain that to individuals at a very granular level, no, Dave Asprey is not an expert in nootropics. Asprey popularized, putting MCT oil and butter in your coffee, which I'm not saying do or don't do or whatever. Should certainly give you a good mitochondrial optimization or brain function boost. Energy boost, but his understanding of nootropics, and at least his explanation of what he understands about nootropics is it's dumbed down, basic, very non-nuanced, and I would suggest not taking a whole lot of advice from Asprey. I think they've built some stacks, and they're good for certain people, and they may not be effective for other people. At the end of the day, when you're taking nootropics, I lean to the side of wanting to, from the individual perspective, fully understand what it is you're talking about. Right? Understand which neurotransmitter systems the nootropics you're taking are affecting. And this isn't rocket science, by the way. It's kind of basic neuroscience. You don't have to be exceptionally intelligent to understand this stuff. Consume our content, consume our courses, watch my videos here on YouTube, and there's a lot of information that I sort of break down. But again, if you're going to be targeting the dopaminergic system because you suspect there's an issue, you lack motivation, and you've checked everything else off, testosterone's fine, your energy's fine, but your motivation is bad and your libido is bad, yeah, that's probably a dopamine issue. You're going to want to get more nuanced about how you're approaching it, right? Is it the receptor side that needs to be upregulated? Do you need to foster the expression of transcription factors, the genetic basis for the creation of new dopaminergic neurons? Do you need to just enhance signaling? You just need larger quantities of dopamine? Getting into, if you're going to get results with the nootropics that you're taking, you definitely want to know what you're talking about. So, in summation, I think Asprey's a good guy. He's a smart dude, certainly smart around a lot of stuff. I think he popularized the notion that certain types or certain brands of coffee contain mycotoxins, which is a real thing, and that may in fact affect brain performance. But as far as your nootropics and your nootropics advice, I think it's very general, and you should look elsewhere for good advice. I think what Asprey has been able to do is sort of turn people onto nootropics, right? He talked about it in such a basic way that it's like the average Joe, or that's sort of just getting into nootropics, or just the idea that they want to perform better, listens to Asprey talk, and it intrigues them, right? They're like, huh, that's interesting. What is this smart drug thing, or what are these things that potentially could make my brain perform better? And that kind of leads them down the rabbit hole of hopefully educating themselves on what they're getting into, understanding at least at a basic level, but a more nuanced level than how Asprey explains it, how nootropics work and which neurotransmitters they're targeting and all this kind of stuff. So that's my take. Thanks so much for watching. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys. I figured I'd just quick do this video because, Asprey's been in our sphere for the longest. And while I think it's, he's a good guy to take certain elements of advice from, when it comes to getting detailed about nootropics, he's probably not where you want to end up looking. And that's nothing against Asprey. He's talking about diet and mitochondria and all these other things that, perhaps he's way more specialized than I am, or that other folks are. But when it comes to nootropics, I wouldn't consider him an expert. One thing I wanted to mention is that we just initiated both free shipping as well as rapid 2-day shipping on the Torque and the Cortex nootropic stacks, our nootropic stacks, which you can find at livecortex.com and in the links in the description below this video. Now, look, one of them is going to stay. The rapid shipping option is going to stay. We just got to the point where folks were like, we had a 1 to 3 day USPS, and that sometimes turned into 4 or 5 days, depending on whether or not there was a delay at the postal service or whatever. And, look, if folks are buying nootropic stacks, they want their brains to perform well, and they want to be taking the nootropic stacks quickly. So we just switched to a shipping solution that guarantees that the product will ship the day of the order, and in most cases be delivered in 2 days, and in some cases under. The only exception would be if you order on a Friday, then you've got the weekend and you're probably looking at getting it Monday or Tuesday. But you order anytime during the week, and in some cases even Friday, you'll get the package Saturday. They're getting it in a day or two. And right now it's free. Okay, so the free element of this rapid 2-day shipping is going to go away. So we'll be back to charging, a regular fee for shipping. It'll still be rapid 2-day shipping, which we're going to keep because we realize how important that is. But right now, you can get Torque and you can get the Cortex Nootropic Stacks. You should just buy both at once. You'll get a discount if you buy them from the Torque page at livecortex.com. You get free shipping. You don't have to pay anything for shipping, and it's rapid 2-day shipping. Okay, that is only for a limited time. So please go do that now. livecortex.com for 2 epic nootropic stacks that'll ship to you fast, and it's free. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Pleasure hanging out with you. Hope you guys are having a great Monday, and I'll chat with you soon.